Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Haney, and I am the Director of Marketing at Energent. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to learn about establishing effective green teams in the healthcare space and attending today's webinar. Although this webinar is part of our healthcare series, the lessons learned here can be very useful in all sectors: industrial, public service, and commercial. Because of that, we've invited a number of participants from outside of the healthcare sector, and we want to thank them for attending today. We are pleased to have Matthew Day from Sustainable Waterloo Region be a guest presenter for today's topic. You will hear in a few minutes that Matthew and his team are very qualified to show us how to run effective green teams in any organization. If you have any questions during this presentation, please use the question tab to the right of your screen and type your questions. We will save some time at the end of the presentation to answer as many questions as possible. The presentation will take about 30 minutes, and we will leave 15 minutes for questions that people may have asked throughout the webinar. The webinar will also be recorded and posted on the Energent website, so if you want to refer to this webinar at a later time, you're able to do so, as well as you're able to forward this link to any of your colleagues that may be interested in this topic but unable to attend. So let's begin. Today's webinar will begin with Matthew speaking about the universal components of a strong green team in any organization. There will be lessons on ensuring the long-term success of the team, including establish clear objectives of the team itself and the projects that the team want to initiate. Matthew will also take us through some points from a recent report from the Healthcare Research Collaborative, as well as an example of a successful hospital green team. Finally, we will leave some time for everyone to ask questions of Matthew. As stated before, please use the question tab to the right of the screen to type your questions for the speaker or for myself. So it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this afternoon, Matthew Day from Sustainable Waterloo Region. Matthew Day is the RCI Program Manager for Sustainable Waterloo Region, where he works closely with members of the Regional Carbon Initiative, or RCI, to set and achieve their greenhouse gas reduction goals. He has been working with Sustainable Waterloo Region since 2008, where he started out as the Volunteer Research Manager. He now supports a group of 15 volunteers in research, resource development, and greenhouse gas reporting. Matthew attended the University of Toronto, where he received his BA and his MA degrees in geography. He minored in philosophy and German as well. So we'll now give Matthew the presenter's chair so he can take you through his presentation.
And here we are. Perfect. Thank you very much, Craig. I'm happy to be presenting on Energent's webinar on green teams this afternoon. It's really great. Thanks for having me. So a few words about Waterloo and how we became interested in green teams years ago when we started getting requests from our members, the RCI members, asking for best practices and advice on how to run an effective green team. Since then, we have been tracking best practices from our members and from secondary research, and we've compiled them on our green team guide. You can see here to the left, which we update every year. We noticed right off the bat that there's a very strong correlation between environmental successes of an organization and the effectiveness of their green team. We recently ran some numbers and found that about a 92% positive correlation between the effectiveness of a green team and the successes of our members. In fact, green teams are responsible for 5% of the overall sustainability projects that our members do on an annual basis. So those numbers have really inspired us to put a lot of energy into researching and developing our green teams. So today I'll take you through some high-level and general advice on starting some green teams. We'll talk about the key components of starting a green team, how to ensure longevity and make them last, the importance of having clear objectives, how to ensure that the team is successful, so choosing projects that are easy to communicate and have reduce your organization's environmental impact, and then we'll end with a few quick case studies and examples. In general, the presentation is pretty fast and high level, but towards the end I'll focus more on hospital examples. When we first started working with green teams, we tended to divide them into two types. The sanctioned green teams Those were green teams with upper management buy-in, and those who didn't, which we called rogue green teams. It's not so much that they had secret meetings in dark basements with passwords. It's just that they tended to operate outside of business hours, and it was tougher for them to get buy-in from their upper management. We found that these rogue green teams were led by very passionate people. They had very strong leadership skills, but aside from a project or two, they didn't last very long. So since then, we've been putting a lot of it. Our members have green teams that are supported by upper management. And there are many and obvious benefits as to why it's important to have upper management on board and support a green team. But the key in general benefit is to having open lines of communication. Links between the green team and upper management, and how the larger organization can use cases and stories from the green team. So two examples of this would be the PR team. So successful sustainability initiatives are good for community development and community communications. So the PR team really likes successful green team stories, but so does the PR, the human resource team, the HR team. They often find that members who are involved with green teams are more engaged and happier, and there has been links to happy employees being more productive employees as well. So we have seen the HR team using green teams stories as communication, recruitment, and retention stories as well. So a good example of this would be an organization that we work with called House of Friendship. They're a not-for-profit social enterprise here in Kitchener-Waterloo, and they run any number of social services. But because the upper management is so supportive of House of Friendship's green team, they know that the green team knows what type of projects upper management would be interested in. They know the typical payback thresholds, the cost and the budget. And this allows the green team to focus their efforts on projects that upper management would support. And upper management knows that they should give their green team autonomy because there is that strong mutual benefit there. So aside from upper management buy-in, it's very important for organizations to become very strategic and deliberate when developing their sustainability objectives as well. And this is not only good for your current green team for selecting projects, but it integrates the green team deeply into the organization. That allows green teams to recruit new members, for example. And also it makes communication easy when the communication department knows about some of the successes. Having these clear objectives allow for internal communication, ensuring that your colleagues can support your projects, especially useful for behavior-based projects such as recycling or hazardous waste, waste diversion, things like that. But then also for external reasons, for PR and marketing. There it is. It's important for green teams. Oops. Let me go back one. There it is. It's important for green teams to have cross-departmental membership. Successful projects often are organization-wide, and having a diversity of perspectives from all across your entire organization is very important. This type of feedback helps understand your obligations and public commitments, whether these obligations are community focused or regulatory focused or financially focused. They also help to understand your organization's capacity and experience, so what your green team's strengths and weaknesses are, for example. Understanding your needs. So for example, if there's a broken window in the basement, or in some part of the office, having eyes all around your facilities are very helpful. Of course, participation, especially as I mentioned before, for those projects focused on employee engagement, having representatives in many departments allow for education and communication and help with buy-in. And communication as well, especially for external project successes, but also still for internal communication. If you're implementing, for example, a project that does automatic light dimmers or controlling the heat automatically, there might be some people who need to be educated on why that's the case. So having some communication specialists will help the smooth transition of projects. The size of a green team is very important as well. It's possible for green teams to be both too small and too large. Small green teams often don't have the power or don't have the expertise to get things done. The green team volunteers often become overwhelmed. But conversely, having a green team that's too large allows for a lot of confusion when it comes to organizing meeting times. And some people can shirk their responsibilities if they think that everyone else will be doing it as well. Communication is generally tougher the larger your green team is. So as a rule of thumb, we try to encourage green teams to be between 3 and 8 members, depending on how big the organization is. But at the same time, if your organization does need more people than that, if you have 15 very important functional areas, for example, at that point we would recommend that you have 2 different green teams, either divided by facility or divided by project types. So we have one member, for example, who, a fairly large organization across 5 facilities in North America, and they have one green team focused specifically on carbon and one green team focusing more on communications and behavior changes and things like that. So ensuring longevity. We found that longevity is closely related to structure. And because the structure is different in so many organizations, I'm going to have to be pretty general here. Some organizations are a little more casual, smaller, and some organizations are a little more technical, and so structure comes more naturally to them. But I will speak a little bit about basic rules for all green teams. For the most part, people join green teams because they're passionate about the environment, or because they're professionally ambitious and they want to develop some new skills. So it's important, therefore, to keep the structure of the green team, but without sacrificing these important elements of fun and skill development. So having some structure ensures the passion and fun will continue, but also keeping management happy and the team focused on results. So regular team meetings are very important for green teams, and I'm sure everyone here is involved in meetings and has led meetings, so I certainly won't talk about effective meetings and all, but I will bring up 2 points for why green team meetings are slightly different from other meetings that you may have. Number 1 is that often green teams don't have external pressure. So it's easy to push green team meetings to the side and think that they're not too important, especially with so many other competing priorities on your agenda. But it is important to resist this temptation because in many ways it is these meetings that hold the green team together. The other thing that separates green team meetings from perhaps other meetings that you have in a day is that in many cases, or in some cases, as I mentioned before, green team participants aren't always working with their expertise and strength. They could be developing new skills. For example, a facilities manager might be practicing his management skills or meeting leadership skills. And because of that, some participants in the green team might be a little shy. But their perspectives are quite important, as we mentioned before, because they might represent a different functional group or a different facility. So it's important to ensure that all the ideas are shared equally and meetings aren't rushed to get to the quickest results. Roles and responsibilities continue with some of the trends that I've been mentioning before. Some green team members are on the team to exercise new skills. So it's important to be sure to set expectations ahead of time, but also to make sure that the needs of the participant are being met, but also the needs of the green team and organization are being met as well. So in terms of structure and a charter, some organizations do prefer a structured charter, such as voting on a new initiative or voting on a new strategy requires 80% of the green team participants to be available and at a meeting. That's fine. Not all organizations operate that way. So that's up to you and your corporate culture. But some things you might want to consider in developing the structure of your green team are whether you need external expertise or not. In some cases, in many cases probably, members of the green team are not environmental professionals. So you might want to consider having a sustainability advisory committee. I know that myself and some other workers at Sustainable Waterloo are on some green team advisory committee, and that's fine as well. Regular successes, important to communicate, important to manage. After a year or so, after you've gained some initial successes, the enthusiasm for the green team may lag a little bit. So you'll want to constantly remind the team how important they are, highlighting some of the successes that the green team have accomplished, and also communicate with a larger organization. Some green teams find that they're constantly battling for legitimacy in their organization. So communicating regularly with your team and with the rest of your organization is important as well. Connecting with other green teams, sharing challenges, coming to webinars such as this are important ways to share lessons with other green teams and get some ideas to solve some of your green team challenges as well. And as I began the slide with, keeping it fun, green teams are largely volunteer-based, so it's important to ensure that it's an enjoyable experience for all green team members. We mentioned objectives before. I'll go into that in a little more detail now, but not too much detail. And this may be intuitive for many of you, in which case that's great. I always encourage green teams to tie their objectives closely in with their organizations and management objectives. So for example, many hospitals now are facing regulatory requirements. And from what I understand, many of you are aware of these regulatory requirements on a high level. And Energent, I just learned, is giving a webinar on June 21st with Bill 397.11 talking about some of the restrictions. So if you're a little fuzzy on the regulatory requirements facing hospitals, it's probably a good idea that you or somebody from your green team check out that webinar. Some hospitals and some organizations are involved in voluntary requirements as well. That's true with RCI members. We require our members to report their GHG emissions on an annual basis that we're happy to help out with. But ensuring that green teams know these voluntary requirements and integrate that into their practices, that's important. Business objectives, communication with the community, PR goals, as I said before, cost savings. You may be familiar with the statistics of energy costs and relating to hospital budgets. there's a few stats that I'll share with you later on in this presentation if you don't know yours specifically already, but it is staggering. And so there's a lot of cost-saving opportunities associated with hospitals. And so if that's a concern for you, then you want to incorporate some objectives into your green team. And of course, all objectives and projects should be measurable. Very important for communication, keeping morale high for the green team, especially when some projects aren't going as well as you want them to go. But your HR department will love it. Your PR department will love it. So yeah, do ensure that all of your projects are measurable. When you are working on projects, here are a few things to consider. Your requirements, as we mentioned before, so the business case, for example, regulatory requirements, voluntary requirements, management requirements. So do the things that you have to do. After that, take a look at the interests and skills of your committee members. Some people may be more passionate about waste issues. Some may be more passionate about energy issues, local food, for example. But then also look at the skills. Some organizations, consulting companies are a good example. Very technical, very statistical, so they tend to be more interested in hardware or technology-based solutions. Others, like House of Friendship, as I mentioned before, or many social services, social organizations, are more interested in the communication and the human level. So they may focus on behavior-based projects, recycling, or Sweater Day is a good example. That's a WWF initiative where employees wear sweaters, and sometimes organizations make it fun and they say ugly sweaters. So people wear ugly sweaters on the day and they turn down their temperature by a degree or two to save some energy. So get to know the culture of your green team. The needs and opportunities in your organization. I mentioned that broken window example. That's a good one. Again, your management cases, and in the next few slides, I'll show you some examples of what some healthcare professionals have identified as opportunities. And also choose projects that can be communicated and celebrated. You may want to choose some projects that are a little simpler but easier to communicate to tie in with some long-term projects. So as you're working on your GHG inventory, for example, your greenhouse gas inventory, that may take you 13 months to do, and that's a long time between successes. But in the meantime, if you can choose a smaller project, that keeps the momentum going. Oh, happened again. There it is. So building effective projects and events. So for a communications point of view, I came across this study and I thought it was interesting. You may be familiar with this. But a study by the Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare in 2001 came up with a report called Doing Less Harm. And its conclusion was essentially that healthcare has an ethical duty to do no harm to the health of the public. And they were talking about air quality issues. And so here are some cases. Here are some numbers that they presented in the study. So 1.4% of all deaths in the world are associated with poor air quality. Almost 6,000 deaths a year in Canada, and thousands of more patients went to the hospital. So here's a pyramid showing the proportion of population affected by air quality illnesses and the severity of the effect. And this is compounded by the fact that many hospitals have incinerators, which lead to quite a large amount of noxious gases and air pollution as well. If you're interested, I can point you towards this study in the question period if you want. Here's another study by the OPA. The energy efficient opportunities in Ontario hospitals. I'm sure you are familiar with some of these numbers. But utility costs represent over 47% of a hospital's total plant operations and maintenance expenditures. And of these, 50% are electricity. So that's a lot of cost, and conversely represents some opportunities as well. In addition to energy, hospitals deal with obviously quite a lot of dangerous chemicals. So there have been some studies also on how to manage chemicals from an environmental point of view, and ensuring that you only need only use the amount that you need. Yeah, so a few more examples before I close up here. The Healthcare Research Collaborative created this report, creating a culture of sustainability, and in some ways this could be seen as a green team guide for hospitals. In many ways, the findings of this document mimic what we found in our research as well, Sustainable Waterloo's research. Although we found that in this guide, it sort of comes up with examples of more organic-based approaches where we argue for, or we tend to advocate a more structured-based approach right from the beginning. But in this report, they talk about how initial projects in hospitals are led by a few passionate people. And often these few projects are quite successful, and in so doing they find new environmental reduction opportunities. And they're simple to communicate. And this in turn gains further support for stronger, more ambitious goals. And they've seen that comes to an increase in interest in the green team, so it allows the green teams to grow a little bit as well. And the conclusion of this report by Dr. Boone said that people want meaning in their work. Sustainability offers a way to connect employers with their employees and communities in a powerful way. And that's a great quote that summarizes really a lot of our findings at Sustainable Waterloo, that people join green teams because they're passionate about it, because they want change to happen. And in these green teams, they find a lot of meaning and ways to increase their experiences at work. And here's an example of a success: Ross Memorial Hospital in Kawartha Lakes. And here on the left, we see a picture of their dialysis team. They won a contest for their Adopt a Garden program. So here are some projects that they have done. Some behavior-based energy savings project, their Save a Little, Save a Watt campaign. They've been tracking their greenhouse gas footprint, as many of you will be doing over the next year and a half. They installed some high-efficiency lights and motion detectors, touchless faucets, which makes sense both environmentally and from a health point of view. A vermiculture program. For those of you who may not know, vermiculture is where you have a bed. Often it's a bucket of worms, and you put your compost in, and they create some great fertilizer that you can use to fertilize your garden. A lot of RCI members, Regional Carbon Initiative members, are using vermicompost to feed their garden, some of which are organic vegetable gardens, and they donate their produce to the local food shelters. Ross Memorial Hospital also began purchasing environmentally friendly cleaning products. This has been increasingly popular in the Regional Carbon Initiative as well. They've been reusing Sharps containers, so that's something a little more specific to the healthcare industry. And as this picture indicates, their Adopt a Garden program. There's a lot of great information about them on the internet that I encourage you to check out if interested. So that is all of my formal presentation today. if you have any questions, feel free. I'll be happy to answer them as best I can.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. That was a great presentation. It gave a lot of really wonderful insight into how to ensure that your green team is functioning well and can get off the ground. Question regarding maybe stalled green teams. So maybe the green team was established at one point and but sort of lost momentum. What's the best way, or what have you seen for sort of starting up that green team again, or sort of putting a little coal in the fire? For, I guess that's a bad example, but a little solar power in the engine.
Right, that's a great question. In fact, we were talking about that at one of our events this past week, Craig, and that's a really good question, and it's quite common. So a simple fix. We have 3 members doing this right now. Well, I guess on a higher level, you would need to do some sort of analysis to figure out why it got stalled. So that's sort of the longer-term solution, and then work to fix that. But let's say you do have a good example. You do have a good understanding of why it stalled, how to kickstart it again. What some of our members have been doing are doing a competition across all staff to think of a new sustainability project. So it's sort of like a reality show where you find a new project, and then the winning project you begin to implement. So it's a way of engaging your staff and your green team by extension. So building enthusiasm.
Question here about is it recommended to have a budget or a cost center for the green team or the green team projects? Or I guess what are the ideal ways to begin to implement some of these projects?
Yeah, another great question. It depends on the size of your organization. It depends on the goals of your organization. But if you have a budget, terrific. In so many cases, sustainability projects save a lot of money, especially energy projects. So if you have a budget, absolutely keep track of the money that you're saving, and you can try to propel that into future budgeting for your green team. So we've been seeing more of what we've been calling a sustainability revolving door fund, namely that management gives a certain chunk amount of money to start a green team. The green team would implement some projects, especially cost-effective projects to begin with, and then half of those savings go back to management, half of those savings go back to the green team, so they can begin investing in projects with longer ROIs, maybe 5 or 6 years instead of the standard 2 or 3 years. Funding really important, and you can be creative with the funding. More than just using money for one-off projects, you can begin to integrate it with a larger financing model.
Oh, very interesting. Also, as well as with all the budget cuts that hospitals are facing these days, being able to contribute back to supporting frontline staff and either reducing cutbacks or encouraging more staff because of the savings that a green team or that an energy team did is certainly valuable across the entire healthcare sector. So that's great example. Some questions about sort of the carbon footprint here, and so can getting a carbon footprint for the organization be a valuable starting place, and how do they do that? And then how do they continue to evaluate what their footprint is on an ongoing basis?
Setting a footprint is a great tangible project, especially for early green teams. It's a great way to be active, to engage a team. You see a very great number towards the end, and so it's easy to communicate. It acts as a great baseline for future energy reductions as well. How does it happen? Well, the first thing you need to do is get a basic understanding of your organization's greenhouse gas footprint on a high level. So what energy sources you need to track. At a basic level, it would be your fleet emissions. It will be your heating emissions if you have a backup generator than additional fossil fuels. your electricity. So those would be great numbers to start with. Um, you track them by your energy bills. You can put them on an Excel spreadsheet and multiply them by what we call an emission factor, which is namely the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that is used to create, for example, a kilowatt hour of electricity. So you take all of your energy bills, you multiply it by the relevant emission factor, and you come up with a number. You can do this retroactively, so if you have bills from previous years, you can get a GHG footprint in, maybe a day if your bills are very well organized. It's also a great experiment or project to use with to get your larger team involved. You would need sort of a project manager. You would need the facilities person possibly to understand the types of energy that your facility uses, but also your finance person to understand the bills and to figure out where they are and to track them. So it's a great way to get the team involved. The results are very are tangible, and from there you can begin to track your energy reduction. So it's a great first step.
I might add an energy management system is also a really good way to do that. But that's it from the sales side here. Okay, I think we got time for one more question here. What is a good tool to increase the awareness of staff toward being greener at work or at home? And I might just add whether it's a tool or whether it's a strategy to increase the awareness of the staff overall. So what they can do at the office as well as what they can do at home.
Yeah, so another great question. We sort of take a three-pronged approach to that. At the very basic level, there's posters that you can put up in the lunchroom. Here you can post some of your ongoing projects. If you're managing wastewater reduction, for example, you can talk about how many flushes that you saved. So having a static poster in a public place is one. Number two, sending out regular emails or newsletters. We find this to be the most effective, actually. If it's a weekly or a monthly newsletter, make sure they're really fun and easy to read, light on text, high on graphics if possible. Talk about some of the communications. Talk about some of the successes of the people who have been doing great things. And then the third thing are coming out to events and building a sustainability community. And this is a lot of what my organization, Sustainable Waterloo Region, is based around, building a culture of conservation. And so we have events once a month that people come out to, and then they begin to develop a community, and that engages employees as well. But I guess the number one tool or resources would be to send a weekly newsletter.
So just communicating, just making sure that you use sort of all communication avenues available for both projects at work and maybe some interesting things people are doing at home. Making sure you're telling those stories.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Any way and every way we can.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I wanted to take a few minutes here and just thank Matthew for taking some of his very valuable time and sharing it with us here during today's webinar. There's been some great points made that he made as well, some really fabulous questions. So thank you to everyone who asked questions and to Matthew for taking the time to answer them. Our hope was that this presentation will spearhead some new green teams being formed from the people on the webinar, and also re-engage some of those that might have been fallen off or maybe not as active as possible. We've heard a lot of some green team initiatives that kind of ebb and flow, and we want to encourage those that are on today's webinar that if you are so inclined to try to rekindle that fire. We'll be posting this webinar on our website over the next few days. On the page listed, you can see it at the bottom under our News and Events tab. You're always able to view this webinar and any of other past webinars that we've done. We do have a number of them in the healthcare sector, but for those that are not in the healthcare sector, we do have some and a growing library as well in other sectors, commercial and industrial. So thank you very much for everyone's for your time, and Matthew as well. We hope you found it enjoyable and informative, most of all. If you are from the Waterloo Region area, please visit Sustainable Waterloo Region and their website for more information how you can become a member of the organization, and they're really incredible regional carbon initiatives that they're running. If not, there may be similar organizations across the country promoting sustainable business practices in all sectors and not just public. So our next webinar, as Matthew graciously mentioned, is on June 21st, and we're going to do a webinar on the Ontario Regulations 397.11. Now, we ran one of these webinars a few months ago or a couple months ago, and we wanted to run a similar one with maybe some updated information for those that were unable to attend. And you can see there's another one in July on monitoring and targeting. So thank you very much for everyone for attending today's webinar. I appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you on June 21st. Have a great day.